50 million kilograms. That's how much garbage the ocean cleanup has now collected from oceans and rivers around the world. It's equivalent to the weight of 500 blue whales. In 2025, they hauled out 25 million kilograms, more than all previous years combined. But what happens to all this plastic? I made a video a few weeks ago on how Boy and Slat transformed his high school science project into a global nonprofit cleaning up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And the main question people asked me was, what happens to that plastic they remove from the ocean? So here's a follow-up answering that question and expanding on whether their cleanup can scale fast enough to matter. Let's start on the deck of their newest system, where all the plastic gets collected. When the ocean cleanup launched their first system in 2018, they estimated that cleaning the ocean would require hundreds of systems. Their next system improved that design enough to bring that number down to around 50. And then came System 03. This system is roughly 3 times the size and 10 times the effectiveness of its predecessor. Their modeling now says that as few as 10 of these systems could clean the entire Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So what is System 03 and how does it work? It's a towed floating barrier roughly 2.2 kilometers long, pulled through the water by 2 crewed vessels. The barrier forms a massive U shape. A screen hangs below the surface, catching debris in a central retention zone. The net catches everything from fragments only a few millimeters across to abandoned fishing nets. According to the ocean cleanup, the system sweeps the area of a football field every 5 seconds. But catching plastic is the easy part. What happens after they haul it out of the water? The crew empties the catch onto the deck, and here, the second chapter of this plastic's life begins. The crew sorts what they can at sea, then the catch is loaded into shipping containers and brought to port. And the first question is, can something useful be made from the plastic? The first proof of concept came in October 2020 when they took the catch from their early pilot system, the one nicknamed Wilson, and turned it into 21,000 pairs of sunglasses. The frames were made from 95% recycled plastic from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The case was made from recycled components of Wilson itself. And the sunglasses sold out. Since then, the ocean cleanup has moved away from making its own products and toward companies who can operate at scale. Kia signed a 7-year global partnership in 2022 and created a trunk liner for their electric SUV made with 40% recycled ocean plastic. They've integrated recycled fishing nets into the carpets and recycled PET bottles into seat fabrics. Coldplay's 2024 album Moon Music was pressed into vinyl made from 70% PET river plastic, intercepted by Interceptor 006 in Guatemala. These partnerships have turned the ocean plastic into products, but much of the debris collected is difficult to recycle. Ocean plastic has been battered by years of UV radiation and salt water, and it's mixed together in ways that make conventional recycling almost impossible. So for the remaining ocean plastic, the ocean cleanup works with facilities where plastic is sorted and cleaned to meet international hazardous waste standards. But that's just the ocean plastic. River plastic is a different story. Unlike the garbage patch, where the catch is fishing nets, crates, and bottles, river trash is a more complex mixture that includes industrial waste, household garbage, organic debris, electronics, and textiles. The composition varies widely from city to city, even river to river, and it belongs to local authorities, not the ocean cleanup. So the organization acts as a partner. Making sure the waste it catches doesn't just end up in an overfilled landfill downstream is the challenge, requiring partnerships with local governments, waste operators, and communities that can sustain the effort. In Malaysia, the waste collected by interceptors is owned by the local jurisdiction and processed through existing municipal waste management systems. In Guatemala, sorting centers have been built on the riverbanks. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Each deployment has to integrate with whatever local infrastructure already exists, or help build one where none does. The ocean cleanup aims to recycle the plastic it collects into new, durable products rather than sending it to landfills. However, some plastic, particularly types that cannot be recycled due to ocean degradation or mixed materials, may be burned for energy, with landfilling being the last resort for non-recyclable remnants. According to the ocean cleanup, the majority of river waste cannot be recycled, composted, or otherwise reused. To ensure that this waste does not re-enter our environment, we work with local operators to find the most responsible disposal solutions available. This can be in the form of sanitary landfills, controlled disposal sites, or waste-to-energy sites. But even with improved collection systems and proper waste disposal, is this work even making a dent in the amount of plastic in the ocean? The Great Pacific Garbage Patch contains an estimated 100,000 metric tons of floating plastic. As of 2025, the ocean cleanup's ocean systems had removed roughly 500 tons from it. That's only half of 1%, and the patch is growing faster than they can clean it. A study by the organization's head of research found that plastic concentrations in the garbage patch have increased 5-fold in only 7 years. The ocean cleanup has collected 50 million kilograms of plastic so far, but we produce 50 million kilograms of garbage every single hour. The plastic is fragmenting faster than anyone predicted, breaking into smaller and smaller microplastics that are harder to catch and more dangerous to marine life. Every year the cleanup takes, the problem gets worse. The main challenge of cleaning the open ocean is that plastic is unevenly distributed and constantly moving. There might be a dense concentration of debris in one patch of water today and nothing there tomorrow. So how do they even find the plastic to collect? And how can they speed up this process to match the pollution rates? For years, the ocean cleanup relied on manual observation, human observers on ships and planes visually scanning the surface for debris. It worked, but it was slow, expensive, and limited in scope. Starting in 2021, the organization developed what they called ADIS, the Automated Debris Imaging System. It's a network of cameras mounted on vessels that collect surface imagery and analyze it in real time. The system was trained on thousands of labeled images from previous expeditions, and it uses object detection to identify floating plastic and to detect the most concentrated plastic patches. But detection alone doesn't solve the problem. They still need to know where exactly to steer the ship. And in April 2025, a study revealed that an AI-powered optimization algorithm had increased the plastic collection efficiency by more than 60% without increasing operational costs. Instead of sweeping the ocean in grid patterns and hoping to pass through debris, the algorithm calculates optimal routes in real time, directing vessels towards the highest concentration zones, even as they shift with the ocean currents. But that still wasn't enough. In July 2025, the Ocean Cleanup announced collaboration with Amazon Web Services. AWS is providing AI and cloud computing infrastructure to build what will be a plastic navigation system, a GPS for ocean garbage. It combines satellite imagery, drone data, and AI-powered cameras that the Ocean Cleanup has been installing on commercial cargo ships for the past 2 years. Those cameras scan the ocean surface as the freighters go about their normal routes, feeding data into machine learning models that predict where plastic hotspots will form before the cleanup vessels even arrive. And AI isn't only solving the search problem, it's also addressing the biggest scientific criticism the project has faced. In 2019, marine biologist Dr. Rebecca Helm published an opinion piece in The Atlantic arguing that the ocean cleanup systems could devastate the Neuston, the community of jellyfish, sea snails, and larvae that float at the ocean surface in the same currents that concentrate plastic. Her claim was alarming. Cleaning up 90% of the plastic would kill 90% of the Neuston. But the Ocean Cleanup's own research challenged that claim. A 2024 study across the North Pacific found that the relationship between plastic and Neuston concentrations is nonlinear, meaning the densest plastic hotspots often had Neuston populations similar to or lower than the broader garbage patch average. But that finding wasn't enough. Plastic collection was still disturbing marine life, and that problem needed to be solved. System 03 now uses 10 underwater cameras monitored around the clock. If an animal is spotted, a marine animal safety hatch blocks the entrance and opens an exit on the bottom. Green LEDs increase visibility, acoustic deterrents ward off sensitive species, and AWS is developing AI-driven detection to supplement human observers. The Ocean Cleanup's environmental director published an assessment concluding that the benefits of cleaning the patch outweigh the environmental costs. So AI is making them faster at finding plastic and better at protecting the life around it. But there's still a problem. Optimizing ocean collection will never fully solve the problem. Quick thing, every video you see here, the research, the editing, the animations, that's all me putting this together because I believe these stories deserve to be told. If you've been watching and you're not subscribed yet, that's the easiest way to tell me that this matters. And if you want to go a step further, consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking join. I really appreciate it. Let's keep going. In the first video, I covered how their research showed that roughly 1,000 rivers are responsible for 80% of the plastic flowing into the ocean. That led to the Interceptor, their solar-powered river cleanup vessel. But deploying a single interceptor on a single river is still a drop in the bucket. There are thousands of waterways feeding plastic into the sea from hundreds of cities. So in June 2025, at the United Nations Ocean Conference, the Ocean Cleanup announced their new plan. Instead of one interceptor on one river, deploy comprehensive citywide systems across the most polluting urban areas in Southeast Asia and the Americas. The goal is to eliminate up to 1/3 of all plastic flowing from the world's rivers into the ocean before the end of the decade. This is the 30 Cities program. The Ocean Cleanup currently has about 20 interceptors across 9 countries. And when we were setting one up in Kingston, Jamaica, the team realized that when you tackle an entire city's waterway network, instead of just one river, you scale faster. The same local partners, government relationships, and waste management infrastructure can support multiple deployments simultaneously. And the program doesn't stop at the river mouth. Each deployment includes coastal sweeps, cleaning debris from nearby beaches, mangroves, and coral reefs. And something I found interesting is that before a single interceptor gets deployed, each city goes through an intensive analysis phase to map exactly how waste moves from streets to the sea. The results determine not just where to place an interceptor, but which type of interceptor to use and how to optimize its positioning for maximum waste capture. The price tag for this 30 Cities program, $350 million. And in early 2026, the program received the largest single donation in the Ocean Cleanup's history. The Audacious Project, the collaborative funding initiative housed within TED, committed $121 million. The first deployments are planned for 2026 in Manila, Los Angeles, Mumbai, and Panama City. And the long-term target? Cut the plastic outflow from each city by 90% by 2034. When Slack gave his TED Talk in 2012, the pitch was, let the ocean currents clean themselves. Now, 14 years later, the organization is saying, the ocean cleanup is necessary, but preventing new plastic is where the real leverage is. And the 30 Cities program is designed not just to intercept trash, but to catalyze investment in local waste management infrastructure to eventually make the interceptors unnecessary. But even if the interceptors and waste management systems work perfectly, there's still a category of plastic that no barrier has been able to capture: microplastics. These are fragments smaller than 5 millimeters, too small for the ocean cleanup systems to catch. For decades, scientists believed that PET, the tough polymer in plastic bottles and polyester clothing, was essentially indestructible in nature. But in 2016, researchers at a plastic bottle recycling plant in Japan discovered a bacteria that had evolved to eat plastic. The organism had developed an enzyme that could break down PET, and the race to speed these enzymes up began. In 2022, a team at the University of Texas at Austin used machine learning to engineer a variant called fast PETase, achieving up to 38 times the activity of the naturally occurring enzyme. It was capable of breaking down post-consumer plastic at low temperatures in days rather than decades. And then, in 2025, researchers at KAUST made a surprising discovery. They analyzed more than 400 ocean samples from across the globe and found that bacteria carrying functional PET-degrading enzymes exist in nearly 80% of the world's ocean waters. Now, there's a huge gap between bacteria that can digest PET in a lab and bacteria that can solve the ocean plastic crisis. These enzymes work slowly compared to the rate we produce plastic, and they primarily target PET, which is only one of many polymers. Scaling enzymatic recycling to industrial levels would be a huge challenge, and releasing engineered organisms into the open ocean raises its own ecological questions. But the trajectory is exciting. We went from PET is indestructible to bacteria are already eating it in nature in under a decade. So, where does that leave us? The Ocean Cleanup now frames its mission as 4 interconnected pillars: extracting legacy plastic from the ocean garbage patches, intercepting plastic in rivers before it reaches the sea, conducting coastal sweeps to clean up what's already accumulated near shore, and advocating for international policy to reduce plastic production and improve waste management at the source. But none of this happens in a vacuum. Global plastic production continues to grow at roughly 4% per year, and SLAT has been clear that cleanup technology is not a substitute for policy change. The organization has been advocating for a global plastics treaty and was present at the UN Ocean Conference pushing for stronger international regulations. So what gives them the confidence that they can close this gap? The pace of progress is accelerating across every front. AI-optimized routing increased collection efficiency by more than 60%, System 03 has reduced the number of barriers needed to clean the entire Great Pacific Garbage Patch from hundreds down to 10. A record-breaking $121 million donation from the Audacious Project unlocked the 30 Cities program. Awareness and public involvement are growing too. Mark Rober and Mr. Beast raised $30 million through the Team Seas campaign, with a share going directly to ocean cleanup operations. 20 interceptors are now running across 9 countries, with 39 more planned for deployment this year. And bacteria are evolving to eat plastic faster than anyone expected. Their goal remains the same one Slat set when he was a teenager: remove 90% of floating ocean plastic by 2040. And for the first time, the tools are starting to match the ambition, but whether they'll be enough is the question the next decade will answer. If you learned something new, or you're leaving here a little more inspired, I would really appreciate you subscribing or becoming a member by clicking join. I spend days, sometimes weeks, researching, scripting, filming, and editing every single one of these by myself, and I do it because I think these stories are too important to go untold. And if you missed it, you might like my last video on a surprising discovery in Australia about how a theory used for decades to mine iron ore turned out to be wrong.